Welcome to a new episode of BlindManMode where I will be trying to obtain the quest cape while playing in almost complete blindness. We are getting closer to our first big goal, which is to complete Dragon Slayer and then being able to move on to pay to play. So in this episode we will be starting our first preparations working towards our very first boss encounter. So let's get into today's video. This is BlindManMode. Say hello to Mr. BlindQuest, who will be taking on one of RuneScape's most classic challenges, obtaining the quest cape, while being almost completely blind. No, Mr. BlindQuest, watch out, where are you going? Come back this way quickly. While celebrating his win in the Black Knight's fortress, Mr. BlindQuest heard chatter about some issues brewing in the Goblin village. And Mr. BlindQuest, thinking of himself as a true peacemaker, he figured he would go take care of that business. Having heard that the issues revolved around the color of their armor, Mr. BlindQuest went in search of some dyes, as he saw himself as a true man of fashion. And as his two favorite colors were orange and blue, he figured that if he brought a dye in orange and a dye in blue, he wouldn't need anything else. And since he found himself in Falador and he needed to get to Draenor village in order to make the dyes, he figured he would pass through the South Falador entrance in search of some pesky imps. And after once again having another imp pass right under his nose, he figured there must not be any imps around, so let's get on with business. And having collected all of the ingredients needed to make both a blue and an orange dye, Mr. BlindQuest was ready to head to Draenor village, where he knew a witch that would be able to help him make those dyes. And this is where something truly incredible happened. And after having learned from previous failures, Mr. BlindQuest thought that maybe the Tornado Mouse just isn't cutting it. Maybe he needs to downgrade in speed to something we could call a Storm Mouse. So moving the mouse at a more reasonable speed, Mr. BlindQuest managed to actually attack an imp for the first time. And in what must be a case of at least 4 planets lining up, the imp doesn't even teleport. So let's switch to my perspective and see what we get on our very first imp kill on the account. And let's see, can we get one of the 4 beats? No, it's a tinderbox, so unfortunately no luck this time, but it is very exciting that we got our first imp kill, and it will be possible to get all of the beats, even if we need to track down and kill over 100 imps. So Mr. BlindQuest continued his journey towards the witch in order to get the dice that he needed. And while buying the dice from the witch, Mr. BlindQuest got approached by someone who said he needed his help. And after walking around a while in the unfamiliar room trying to figure out exactly what was going on, Mr. BlindQuest found a woman. And to his big surprise, Mr. BlindQuest found out that the woman wanted him to find her evil twin, which in itself would have been hard enough, as Mr. BlindQuest had no idea what the woman looked like, so he had no idea what her twin would look like either. But even worse was that Mr. BlindQuest needed to catch the evil twin with a giant machine in a room far away, so Mr. BlindQuest could not see anything even near where the woman would be located. But luckily for Mr. BlindQuest, if anything, he was a big innovator. And as the creator of the Tornado Mouse strategy, he soon realized that he could also create a Tornado Joystick strategy. And somehow, by moving the joystick around at random and pressing the grab button again and again, Mr. BlindQuest managed to get what appeared to be the evil twin in the first attempt. And he happily went to collect his reward for what might have been the slowest molly catch in the history. And the reward turned out to be 3 uncut emeralds, which I'm sure will come in very handy in the future. So with his newly obtained dice in his backpack, Mr. BlindQuest figured that if he could find an evil twin in the darkness without seeing a single thing, it would be a piece of cake to find the next imp. So back in his favorite imp catching spot, he started walking around blindly using the Tornado Storm strategy in the woods, hoping for the best. And this time it actually turned out that there wasn't even a single imp nearby, so we never know if Mr. BlindQuest with his newfound confidence actually would have managed to find the imps if they had been there. But with everything ready to help the goblins, Mr. BlindQuest went for the Goblin village. And after getting lost a few times, Mr. BlindQuest finally made it into the Goblin village. And he found the 2 goblin generals who were arguing about what color their armor should be. And just as expected, they were very interested in a blue and an orange armor. So they told Mr. BlindQuest that they had a few goblin armors laying around the village that he could try and find and dye them, and they would try them on. But Mr. BlindQuest, the natural-born businessman, had a better idea. He told them that to save everyone some time, he had already dyed 3 goblin armors and tried them on a very real goblin. And he had brought some photos with him, so he wouldn't have to waste time going around dyeing armors. And he had even brought a reference photo of a normal goblin in a normal goblin armor, so they could see the difference. But would you believe that the goblins actually had the audacity to say that they didn't think that the 3 goblins in the photo looked like real goblins? And even more ridiculously, they actually claimed that it was Mr. BlindQuest himself in the photos. And although Mr. BlindQuest calmly tried to explain to them that in the photo the normal goblin clearly has a green head like normal goblins do, and Mr. BlindQuest does in fact not have a green head, so they couldn't be photos of him. The goblins just wouldn't understand and they wouldn't believe him. So Mr. BlindQuest had to leave and find the goblin armors. So Mr. BlindQuest had to start stumbling around the goblin village looking for some armors that the generals had told him that might be there, although they wouldn't even tell him where they could be found. And after a very long time of searching blindly through the entire village, Mr. BlindQuest finally had found the 3 armors and dyed them in the 3 colors that he needed. And now it finally is time for my favorite part of questing in old school RuneScape, and actually the only reason that I do quest at all, the cutscenes. Just take a look right here where you can see how the background shifted from Eclipse Black into Inkstain when the goblin comes out wearing the orange goblin maid. It truly is one of the blessings of this series, getting to experience these cutscenes in a whole new way like we have never seen them before. So after seeing the goblin try on these 3 goblin maids and in the end choosing to stick with the brown one, that marks the end of the Goblin Diplomacy's quest. With the reward of 5 quest points, our very first crafting XP on the account with 200 XP and a gold bar. Not the greatest reward, a few crafting levels, and the quest points will be very nice when we finish up with free to play, as some of the very interesting members quests does require a ton of quest points to start. Having seen and talked to the goblin generals who were actually very high standing officers in the goblin army, Mr. BlindQuest thought to himself, I could probably be a warrior as well. Although one thing that Mr. BlindQuest really needed in order to become a warrior was equipment. Right now his equipment consisted of a disguise used to try and sneak into the Black Knight's fortress and a scimitar that he luckily, let us say, found on a dinner table in a random house. Mr. BlindQuest knew that he could buy a lot of very strong armor and weapons in the various stores around Gielinor, but he did not have a lot of money to his name. But he had heard that a lot of money could be found in a hole in the ground in the Barbarian village, so he went to the nearest bank in order to grab a lot of wines before going into the dark hole where he hoped that money could be found. So with his backpack full of wine, he made his way towards the Barbarian village once again in order to go in search for the money. Reaching the Barbarian village, he made his way into the dungeon and he started stumbling around blindly, hoping for the best. And at first he was very pleasantly surprised about how easy the going was. He could hear something moving around him, but nothing attacked him, so he could calmly walk around the dungeon in search for where he hoped that he could find the first piece of the treasure. He had been told that there would be 4 levels to the dungeon, and the further down he got, the bigger the amount of money he would be able to earn. He had also been told that down on the last floor there might be some kind of a special treasure that he didn't know what would be. And finally he could feel some kind of change in the air, and he knew that he must be very close to getting the first piece of the treasure. Finding a big chest in the middle of the room, he found 2000 gold, and he had the weird impulse to do some kind of a flapping dance move that he had never performed before. And after finding a ladder going downwards, he found himself on the 2nd floor of the dungeon. And here he realized very quickly that things were going to be a lot harder, as he felt something hit him very hard in the head. And while making his way through the second level of the dungeon, he was very happy that he had bought himself a new iron helmet, as it did help a lot taking the blows in the head from the unknown creatures all around him. And after stumbling around for a while, he once again felt something change in the air, and he could feel that once again he was very close to the chest where he would be getting a lot more money this time. And after finding 3,000 gold inside of a big grain of rice, he went in search for another ladder so that he could go even deeper down into the dungeon. So he found himself down on the 3rd floor with his backpack almost still full of wine and 5,000 gold richer, so he was very hopeful and thought that he might actually be able to make it all the way down. Down on this 3rd floor, he was feeling that the unknown creatures were starting to hitting him a lot harder. So every time that he felt himself taking a hard hit, he drank an entire jug of wine and instantly he felt a lot better. And still with a lot of wines left, he made it to the chest, and this time he found 5,000 gold inside, so now he had already earned 10,000 coins and he was very happy. So he thought to himself that since he had so many wines left, he would go in search of the reward from the 4th and final floor and see what it might be. And unknowingly to Mr. BlindQuest, as he couldn't see anything, he had taken the very long way around on this 4th and final floor, which might end up causing him a lot of trouble as he is already drinking a ton of wines and he still has a very long way to go to reach the center. But sticking to his strategy and years of experience in drinking wine, he finally makes it into the center of the 4th floor. And he is given the choice to choose between 3 different boots. And as Mr. BlindQuest is a very stylish man, he does of course choose the fancier boots, which are very colorful and very pretty. And after having made it back to Lumbridge with now over 12,000 gold, Mr. BlindQuest goes in search of some more armor, and he goes towards the desert where he knows that he can buy some plate legs, which is one of the only things that are missing in his armor. So he goes in search of the plate leg store, which he knows can be found somewhere in Kharid. And after finally finding the store and looking at the ridiculous prices of some of the more high tier legs, he decides to buy some iron plate legs like his iron full helmet. And he wants to make sure that he doesn't spend too much, as he still has the most important thing in Kharid to find, the scimitar shop. And like any true adventurer, he knows that the most important thing for a warrior is his weapon. The only issue is that he has no idea where the Kharid scimitar shop might be located, so he ends up entering every single house in the entire city in search of the damn scimitar shop. But in the end, after a very long time of searching, he finally does find the scimitar shop. And he ends up buying all possible upgrades, as he will need a lot of firepower if he wants to slay Elwak at some point. And while already finding himself in Kharid, Mr. BlindQuest had heard about some kind of a prince in need of rescue. And sure enough, a prince by the name of Ali had been captured and put in jail in Draenor village, which luckily is a part of Gielinor that Mr. BlindQuest knows very well. And Mr. BlindQuest wholeheartedly believed that just because you break the law a few times, or a bit more than a few times, doesn't mean that you need to be sent to prison. Mr. BlindQuest actually had heard something about the police looking for him for some kind of thefts that had taken place all around Gielinor, but I don't think that has anything to do with the situation at hand. But in order to get Prince Ali out of prison, Mr. BlindQuest had been told that he needed to find a lot of different items. And as gathering all of these different items while playing blindly took a very long time, I will see you back in Draenor with all of the items collected. And back in Draenor, Mr. BlindQuest had been told that the witch Aggie and the sailor Ned could help him with some items that he would need for the disguise. As far as Mr. BlindQuest had understood, the plan was to dress Prince Ali up in woman's clothes and then just walk out of the jail. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but I guess we'll find out later. So with all of the different pieces of the disguise together, Mr. BlindQuest went in search for the Draenor jail. And what initially seemed like a very easy step actually turned out to be quite difficult, both in locating the Draenor jail, but especially in locating the door, all while being attacked by the guard jails. But in the end, after being out of wine, Mr. BlindQuest managed to locate the door and get to safety inside. And Mr. BlindQuest knows that he will need a key in order to get Prince Ali out. So he has been brainstorming for a while about what might be the best way to go about it, and his best plan pretty much boils down to asking the guard a few questions about the key, which isn't suspicious at all, don't worry. And after doing that he says, "Wow, that's very interesting, do you mind if I hold the key for a moment?" And the guard doesn't think that's suspicious either, so Mr. BlindQuest takes the key and he makes a copy. So after making his way back to Kharid, which is apparently necessary in order to use the bronze bar to make the bronze key out of the bronze mold, Mr. BlindQuest is ready to break Prince Ali out of prison. And let me tell you that this quest is reminding me how painful some of the pay-to-play quests will end up being. And here I mean painful, not necessarily difficult, but very, very, very painful. Because not even talking about how long it took me to gather all of the necessary items to start the quest has me walking back and forth between Kharid and Draenor, which isn't even that big of a distance compared to some of the distances that the pay-to-play quest will have me walking. But while playing in darkness, it takes a very, very long time every single time, because I do often get lost or I am not completely sure where I need to go, so I need to keep going in one direction until I see something that I recognize, because then I might at least have some kind of an idea about where I need to go. It has, for example, now more or less been a minute in this clip since I left the toll gate, and I have sped it up 8 times, so that means that so far I have spent 8 minutes getting from the toll gate to Draenor Village, and I'm still looking for the damn jail. So while enjoying this clip of me still looking for the damn Draenor jail, let's for example imagine how long one small favor will take me, as it is known for being a very, very, very annoying quest, as you have to keep walking around and around and around on the map. And for me it will take, I don't know how much longer, 10 times longer doing the entire thing. So apart from all the difficult quests like the puzzles, for example, that I will come across, or the bosses, there will also be a huge element of painfulness when I need to go through all of the more simple quests that just has a lot of walking. So while rambling about how long some quests will end up taking me, Mr. BlindQuest did manage to find the jail in the end, get in there, get the guard drunk, and managed to dress up Prince Ali in woman's clothes. And I'm still not sure if the whole disguise business was really necessary, as the guard must have been very drunk if he just let the woman walk out of the cell, as there only was Prince Ali in there before. So if you know that there's only one person in the cell and suddenly a woman comes walking out and he doesn't ask any questions, was the disguise really necessary? But while rambling about the logic of the storyline of an old school RuneScape quest, we are finishing up Prince Ali Rescue with the reward of 3 quest points, 700 coins, and the ability to walk through the toll gate for free, which might come in handy down the line and save me a little bit of money. That is Prince Ali Rescue done. And the money will surely go into the preparation of killing Elwalk, which is our next big goal, as we are now getting closer. There aren't that many more free-to-play quests left. So let's talk a little bit about the goals for this account. But before we do that, if you made it this far into the video and you liked it and you would like to see more, please think about liking and subscribing. The main goal for this account is obviously the quest cape, as I have talked about a lot of time. But it is not the only goal that I have for the account. I do also want to try and see how many bosses it actually will be possible to do. Which means that before leaving free to play, I do want to try and kill the 2 free to play bosses, Obor and Bryophyta. I'm not sure exactly how that name is pronounced. So in the next episode, apart from the questing, we will be starting some of the preparations necessary to kill these 2 bosses. And once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you with the next episode of BlindManMode very soon.